Coloradans will have a new governor for the first time in 8 years, and voters have concerns.
So I'd like to see that what they're going to do to try to keep Tabor.
Better planning, better regional government planning.
Low-key, the potholes are kind of bad.
Democrats have held control of all statewide offices and the state legislature for years.
I said I was the people's lawyer. I will now be the people's governor.
Will voters put Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser in the governor's office, or will they look to Republican candidate Victor Marks? How many debates do you plan to commit to?
Everyone that matters. I'm excited to go against Phil Weiser, trust me.
Marks declined the invitation to this debate. But voters have another option in unaffiliated candidate Greg Lopez. He'll take the stage tonight in our Colorado governor's debate. Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us for this Colorado gubernatorial debate. I'm Allison Zimmerman. I'm joined by my co-moderator this evening, Ernest Lunning from Colorado Politics, and we've got an exciting night ahead. Republican candidate Victor Marks has declined our invitation for this debate. Instead, we'll be having unaffiliated candidate Greg Lopez on the stage, as well as Democratic nominee Attorney General Phil Weiser. Now, we do have a few rules for this debate. Candidates will be given 1 minute to answer each question. Candidates will both be asked the same question. Rebuttals will be at our discretion, and those will be 30 seconds. Candidates have not been provided these questions ahead of time. We'll also have a short answer round, and I want to emphasize short answer to our candidates here on stage tonight, and we'll have more details when we get to that portion of our program this evening. Now, for our audience in the Pikes Peak Center this evening, we want to remind you to please keep this a fair environment, and please be quiet and respectful throughout the duration of this debate. As I mentioned before our program, you will have opportunity at the very end to applaud, cheer, show that support for your candidate here tonight. And we also held a coin toss before this debate. Mr. Lopez, you won. You have selected to answer the first question first, meaning you will be going last in closing statements, as I understand. And with that, we'll begin.
I lost my place here. Second. All right, both candidates here. Colorado's next governor takes over after 8 years of the Jared Polis being in office, and he centered his administration around saving people money, implicitly making Colorado more affordable. By many measures, however, Colorado is far less affordable now than it was when he took office, and the state's lack of affordability across the board is the problem that we hear most often about from voters. What will you do when you take office to address this? And what's your longer range plan to make the state affordable for all its residents so everyone can raise families and stay here? 1 minute, please.
You know, it's a pleasure to be here in Colorado Springs. As a veteran, I like to be in a city where military is really embraced. You know, it's interesting because Governor Polis, in his first State of the State, he promised us that he was going to transform Colorado. And in just 8 years, he made Colorado into California. We are one of the most expensive states throughout the nation. So how does a governor step in and fix what's happened? The first thing I'm going to do is review all the regulations and all the fees, because people are struggling here in Colorado. And what the governor can do is make sure that government doesn't make life harder, that government makes lives easier. And right now, government has so many regulations on our small business and people that we need to remove all that, roll all that back so that people in Colorado can have a good quality of life.
All right, thank you. Mr. Weiser, 1 minute.
I want to focus on 3 areas of making Colorado more affordable. First, homes. We don't have starter homes that first-time buyers, whether it's a teacher, law enforcement officer, or a young person, can afford anymore. Whether it's here in Colorado Springs, whether it's in Jefferson County, name your county, this is a problem. I've got a plan and a commitment to how we fix it, making it quicker, easier, and cheaper to build these homes. Second, on health care. Too often, people aren't getting primary and preventative health care. Instead, it's until they get sick and have an acute condition, they pay through the nose and end up with medical debt. We can do better. And finally, how do we catalyze competition? That's why I stopped the merger between King Soopers and Safeway because it was going to raise grocery prices. That's why I want to stop collusion from corporate landlords using algorithms. I'm a fighter for consumers as your Attorney General. I'll be a fighter for consumers as your governor.
Let me ask a quick follow-up.
Sure.
And Greg, you can have 30 seconds to include what else you want if you want. But can you give me a couple of things that you can do as governor soon after you take office?
Of course.
To let folks know that things are going to be more affordable and maybe even make things a little more affordable
Yes, by all means.
right away. 30 seconds.
So here's the deal. Attorney General Weiser has this blueprint. But in this blueprint, if you read it, he talks about affordable being houses that cost $600,000 and below. No one can afford a $600,000 home. I'm looking to bring starter homes, real starter homes, that are in the 235 range. I'm also going to work with the legislature to make sure that we allow all renters to be able to deduct their entire year's rental payments off their income tax. People are struggling. Those are the two things that I'm looking to do.
Okay, Mr. Weiser.
I'm really glad that Greg's promoting the Colorado Blueprint because I would promote it to you all to read as well. It is 109 pages, so you might want to stick with the executive summary. And what you'll see it says is homes under $600,000. Obviously, some communities where land is more expensive, it's more expensive to have a starter home. But I'd love to see them half that price, and the way to do that's by leaning into innovation. One point I mentioned is modular homes that are made at scale. They can be 20% cheaper, 30% quicker to put in. That's the type of leadership I'm going to lean into.
Okay, real quick, 30 seconds. What can you do, though, the first month you're in office, that people will really feel that things are more affordable, not just down the road?
Well,
Mr. Lopez?
You need to understand, Colorado's in a crisis. Everywhere we look, Colorado's in a crisis. People are looking for someone that they can trust, someone that they can believe that we will take Colorado to a place where Colorado can be proud to be a state again. So the first thing that I can do is just earn the trust and confidence, not only of the legislature, but also of the business leaders, that we need to work to bring business back. Small business need to feel that that they are welcomed in the state of Colorado instead of being kicked out of the state.
Okay, Mr. Weiser, 30 seconds. Do businesses feel welcome in Colorado?
When I'm governor, we're going to change the equation so that if you're a business in Colorado, you don't feel like the wind's in your face, you feel like it's at your back. Too many businesses right now tell me that it is hard to operate, that we could make it a lot easier to operate if we only listened to what their needs were, what their pain points are. I've spent that time listening to business leaders. I'm ready to get to work to change the equation, to change the culture of state government so businesses know I'm a fighter for you. I've been a leader in supporting startups and businesses throughout my career. I'll be that way as governor too.
And we want to get into more specifics on that front of getting businesses to not only come to Colorado, but stay here. So, Mr. Weiser, if you are elected, what specifically will you do to get businesses to come here and stay here?
I want to start with Chris Pearson, the CEO of Agile Space Industries, as a case study that illustrates just what I need to do and just what I will do. Chris told me he was building the second manufacturing facility for the company, and he had to decide, do you build it in Colorado or you go somewhere else? He's going to Oklahoma. The reason he told me is because the permits he needs would take months and months and months in Colorado, but in Oklahoma, it's days. That's a call to action. We've got to catalyze quicker and more supportive permits at the local and the state level. He also told me we need to do better to build talented workers so that he can get the workforce he needs. And finally, his concern, what we're talking about before, housing people can afford, that bears on the business environment. I'm committed to this work. Like I said, this has been life's work for me, supporting growing businesses. It'll be a top priority for me as your governor.
And Mr. Lopez, what specifically will you do to get businesses to come here and stay here?
You know, as a former director of the United States Small Business Administration, for 7 years, I was the voice and face of small business. I know the struggles that small businesses have every single day. And I'm going to make sure that our small businesses and our businesses here in Colorado succeed and thrive. Before I go out and try to bring in new businesses, we need to let the people here in Colorado know that we care about them. You know, as a former mayor of the town of Parker and a city manager, I know land use, I know zoning, I know permits, I know exactly how to streamline the opportunity for people to come in here and open their doors. We need to understand that if we're going to make Colorado great again, we need to let the people of our state feel that we care about them before we bring or invite anybody from outside of the state. That's what I will do, because as I travel the state, small businesses are telling me regulations are killing me, and it's all because of the fact that they don't understand what we struggle with every single day.
All right, thanks. Colorado closed a $1.5 billion budget shortfall for this fiscal year by cutting spending on Medicaid, reducing general fund reserves, and changing TABOR refunds to let the state keep some more money. The state budget looks like it'll be in better shape next year if that round of cuts are maintained, but the state is facing big shortfalls again after next year when federal cuts to Medicaid and food stamps begin to take effect. If you're elected, you'll work with a joint budget committee to come up with balanced budgets. How do you achieve this in the next few years? And please be specific. Mr. Lopez, 1 minute.
You know, so talking about Medicare, tonight I have my Lieutenant Governor, Taylor Romero, an individual that's been in the medical industry for over 25 years. It will be under her guidance and leadership that we're going to get Medicaid in hand. When we talk about the budget, why is it that the Joint Budget Committee uses baseline budgeting and not zero-based budgeting? When all they want to talk about is the new money and not talk about the money that they spent in the past, that is wrong. As governor, I'm going to make sure that your taxpayer dollar is being used correctly. And the way you do that is you make sure that you go back to zero-based budgeting, question every department, question every program, question every expense, and ask, is this hurting people? Is this working? And is this putting people over politics? That's what I will do as governor my first 100 days.
Okay, Mr. Weiser.
My approach to our budget is going to rely on 3 critical points. First, I'm going to listen hard to communities about programs they're familiar with. The cuts in Medicaid, the way we approach Medicaid needs to be informed by those who rely on it, many of whom have ideas on how we can save money. Number 2, we've got to be a lot more creative, a lot more innovative, how we might get more bang for our buck to do things more efficiently. And I'm going to look hard at how we make government work better, adopting new technology, rethinking old ways. And third, we need to be smart about making the right types of investments. Right now in Colorado, if you leave prison, there's a 45% chance in 3 years you're back in prison, which means we're paying a lot for prisons. The national average of that reentry rate is 37% return in 3 years. Think about how much money we save when we improve reentry, something I'm going to prioritize as your next governor.
Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds more, but some specifics. What are you actually going to look at reducing in the budget?
Yes.
Because there's going to be some big cuts down the road for
first
federal.
of all, let's make sure we understand. Attorney General never answered the question. The question was about the budget. And everything he said is about spending more money. It wasn't about how we're going to bring the budget back to reality. So one of the things that we need to do, again, we need to go back to zero-based budgeting. One of the things that we need to evaluate is why are we spending money on programs that truly are not helping people? They're hurting our communities. They're not helping. We're spending money we shouldn't be spending, and one of the things we need to do is evaluate the entire budget.
Okay, Mr. Weiser, is Mr. Lopez correct?
No.
Would you like to elaborate? 30 seconds, please.
I first said we need to make sure that we're listening to those who are involved with and affected by programs. And what I've heard from those, for example, who get Medicaid benefits is they have ideas how to save money. We should be listening to people in state government on how we're more creative, coming up with smart solutions. And we should make smart investments in areas like reentry that will help save us money and help stop putting so much money into prisons.
All right, thank you.
All right, affordable and attainable are two words that get thrown around a lot when it comes to housing. I know you both have briefly touched on housing, but we're going to dig a little deeper into it. Both of you have committed to building a certain number of homes to address this gap. Mr. Lopez, you've promised 25,000 starter homes in 4 years. Mr. Weiser, you've proposed a goal of 40,000 owner-occupied units. What will it take to get you to your goals? Mr. Weiser, you have 1 minute.
I appreciate the chance to go a little deeper because the current situation is unacceptable. We're losing teachers. We're losing firefighters all across Colorado. Here's how we change it. First, let's make permitting for these starter homes as quick as possible. Particularly if you're using a modular home, we know what it is. How about getting permits that someone can get in 1 week? Second, why do we have the same permitting rate for a starter home as a mega mansion? Doesn't have to be that way. I can work with local governments, change the equation to make it more accessible, more affordable to build these starter homes. And third, I mentioned this before, leaning into innovation. If we start building modular homes at scale in Colorado, they are 20% cheaper than ordinary homes. And I got to tell you, I've been to modular homes, you can't tell the difference. And they're 30% quicker. I want to bring this leadership. I want to bring a down payment assistance program for our teachers, for our law enforcement professionals, because we've got a crisis on our hands in housing. I'm ready to fix it.
And Mr. Lopez.
So I'm glad that Attorney General and I agree that affordability is a problem. But the real question is, how did we get here? How is it that now we have housing that we can't afford? So one of the things that I will do, because I've done this before, is sit down with builders and developers and the planning departments of certain communities. Because I know land use. I know how to bring down the cost of a house, either by shrinking side yard setbacks or making sure that we have detached sidewalks and not attached sidewalks. These are the types of things when you talk about making sure a community is thriving. You need to have someone who understands how a community works. You don't need more studies. You don't need more plans. You need to be on the front lines talking to these individuals because our younger generation is afraid that they will never be able to buy a home. I was out in Grand Junction and someone told me, I will never be able to buy a home. I think the first time I'll get a home is when my mom and dad dies. Think about that for a minute. This is what the younger generation is thinking, that why they can't afford a new home.
And Mr. Lopez, I want to give you a minute for this to revisit something that you talked about a little bit earlier. But also previously, you've said that developers want to do the right thing and build housing. That shows they care about the community. But developers also want to make money. So what is the actual mechanism that's going to get those starter home prices down to $235,000?
So the first thing you got to understand is about 60 to 90% of the cost of a home is buried in the ground. These are tap fees and sewer fees. There's no reason why the Metro District should be charging that. We also need to understand that the HOAs are out of control. The HOAs are now attacking homeowners. So when you look at how do you bring down the cost of housing, you need to understand what it takes to build a home. And developers do want to be part of the community. And so when you sit down with them and tell them what the need of the community is, they recognize that if they want to sell their product, they need to build a product that people will buy. And right now, special districts are the worst thing that I believe that we can have in the state of Colorado, because this is how the developers and builders get around having to pay for everything, and they push all that cost onto the shoulders of the homeowners. That's what I know, and that's what we work on. I've done it before as mayor of Parker, Colorado, and I'll do it again as governor.
30 seconds, just help me understand. Is it then reducing those sewage fees, things that you mentioned, that you believe is going to get that price down to $235,000?
Yes, look, it's like anything else. You had to evaluate, what does it cost to build a home? Everybody just thinks that it's the windows and the lumber. There's a lot that goes into developing that lot, building that lot, in order to put the house on there. And workforce is another issue. We need to make sure that we have the right workforce to build these homes. And I'm here to tell you, when I talk to the younger generation, they're excited about the possibility of owning a home that's cost less than $235,000.
And Mr. Weiser, you'll have 1 minute for this question as well. So you've proposed pushing for planning and zoning decisions specifically to add housing to public transit. Colorado Springs local government has been vocal against state regulations relating to land use. So why should the state have a say in how home rule cities zone land?
I'd like to, Allison, first start with the point about what Mr. Lopez just made. He talked about the need for workforce, and I just want to say I totally agree. I was here in Colorado Springs several months ago visiting with Careers in Construction. It's a model program, getting young people in high school developing those skills for construction, to be an electrician, to work as a plumber. We don't have enough people in these critical roles, good paying jobs, and that's part of what's making it harder to build. I want to lean in hard and invest in hard on career and technical education. As for how the state can work with local government, the relationship I foresee is one of collaboration and one of how do we push each other? How do we lift each other up? That means we've got to challenge local governments to do what I talked about, to lower those permitting fees, create incentives to build the types of homes, including near transit, that build more livable and sustainable cities. We can do this work. I've worked with local governments as Attorney General, including on the opioid crisis. I will take those skills and that commitment to the governor's mansion.
All right, and I will just ask candidates to be mindful of the timer. But I do want to follow up and just give you 30 seconds to hear more explicitly, though, why should the state have that say? You talk about that collaboration, but why is it the state's responsibility what a home rule city does?
As a matter of Colorado governance, the reality is when you're at the state level and you've got issues that are important, you're going to work with local governments to get things done. And setting the right tone and direction has to be a shared relationship and a partnership. Nancy Henjum is here from your city council, and she can talk about how I've been a partner on the opioid crisis. And that partnership is not with a heavy hand, it's with a helping hand.
All right, and Mr. Lopez, we'll give you 30
You know what? I would never take local control away from a jurisdiction. I was the mayor of a home rule town. And when government at the state level brings down unfunded mandates across the state, this is basically telling you that the state government fully doesn't understand the struggles of a small community, the struggles of land use. And so I would never take away local control from a jurisdiction.
And Mr. Weiser, we'll give you 30 seconds.
What I will underscore, they're Republican county commissioners across Colorado who've talked about their readiness and excitement to work with me as our next governor. Because when you ask people about my operating style, my commitment to collaboration, you don't have to guess what type of governor I'll be. You can look at my record on water, on public safety, on how I've worked on the opioid crisis. It is one of collaboration. That's why so many Colorado leaders support me to be our next governor.
This is for a question for both of you, but Mr. Weiser, we'll start with you. Your office has sued the Trump administration more than 70 times since the president took office for the second time last year. Last week, we found out in material disclosed as part of one of those lawsuits that the administration appears to have coordinated pressure on Colorado over Tina Peters' incarceration and the state's vote-by-mail system, among other things possibly. As governor, not as Attorney General, but as governor, how would you respond to that kind of targeting in the future? And
Ernest, I want to start with hot off the press from yesterday. I've got my copy of the Constitution in front of me, and what it says is the states manage the time, place, and manner of elections. Colorado's decided how we manage our elections. We use the mail for our elections so everyone gets a ballot. Now, the president, as part of conspiracy theories or who knows what, has said Colorado's mail elections, the ones that former Secretary of State Wayne Williams of Colorado Springs administered, has embraced, and has validated, those elections are our constitutional right. President Trump is taking away our sovereignty as a state. If you believe in federalism and the Constitution, you call out lawless behavior that's a threat to our sovereignty and efforts to interfere with our elections. Whether it's Attorney General or Governor, I won't tolerate that lawlessness. I won't bend the knee. I will always fight back.
Okay.
You
Mr.
know,
Lopez.
I carry the Constitution, the United States Constitution, in my pocket, and I look at the 10th Amendment, states' rights, and states' rights trump federal laws. And so when you do have a president, I don't care whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. As an unaffiliated candidate, I represent the people, not a party. And so I will stand tall anytime someone is trying to do harm to the people of Colorado. Now, how do you work with Washington? You build relationships. Look, as a former congressman, I know how to go into those hallways and create relationships. I can speak to the Speaker of the House. I can speak to directors of all the different departments because I've worked in the belly of the beast. I'm the former director of the United States Small Business Administration. I know how to get the attention of people, and that is why I was able to succeed in stopping Colorado from violating the Endangered Species Act when they brought in wolves from Canada. I will continue to do that.
Mr. Weiser, 30 seconds, respond to what Mr. Lopez says.
Greg, those first 30 seconds about the 10th Amendment, that was the thing of beauty. And you were so close to saying, and that's why I'll stand with Attorney General Weiser against any effort to undermine our right to manage our elections. Now, Victor Marx isn't here. He wasn't ready to answer questions about the Constitution. You are ready to answer those questions. I worry that he's not ready to protect Colorado and our constitutional rights. Greg, can you stand with me and protect our sovereign rights, our ability to run our election as the Constitution says?
I will tell you this, I will work with anybody. So when I become governor, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and talk about how we make sure Colorado is a state that we can all be proud of.
I'll take that as a yes.
Well, I've got a follow-up for both of you, and this is in the context of the original question, which is knowing what happened in December and later, would you have commuted Tina Peters' sentence like Governor Polis did, Mr. Lopez?
You know, one of the things that people need to understand that as a governor, you're required to make thoughtful decisions about the future of individuals, specifically when they've broken the law. Look, there is no question that the law had been broken. But however, the appellate court here in Colorado stated that the judge on that case did not do it correctly. It talked about how the judge personalized the sentencing. And I think it's important for any governor to evaluate the totality of the file before they make a decision on someone's life at any point.
So would you have commuted her sentence knowing what you know now?
I believe that I would support Governor Polis for what he did.
Okay, Mr. Weiser.
Working with Republican DA from Mesa County, Dan Rubenstein, we prosecuted Tina Peters. She was sentenced after a jury of her peers found her guilty. And at every point, essentially up until now, she has been unrepentant. She has taken solace in being part of some political cause, but she has not taken responsibility for her crimes. And to commute a sentence when someone is completely unrepentant is wrong. What Governor Polis did is wrong. I wouldn't have done it.
All right. Are we done on this? Should we move on to...
Well, no, let me add. You know what?
Greg, take 30 seconds.
Yes, the higher courts, and I know you work in the judicial system, the higher courts sent down a message that they did it wrong and they needed to fix it. And so if we're going to hold the courts at a high esteem, we must always evaluate why they're making that instruction. And I will tell you that I was there. I witnessed what they said. And I will tell you that your office struggled in trying to explain to the court why they believed that they had done it right. And I think, folks, it's important to understand the governor is the highest ranking official, and he must make good informed decisions when he has to face these types of questions.
Okay, Mr. Weiser, 30 seconds, then we'll move on.
Thank you, Ernest. 2 points I'd add here. First, the appellate court remanded the issue to the lower court for a resentencing to ensure that the sentence was proper and didn't include any impermissible basis. The fact that Governor Polis didn't let that process play out as the judicial process should was overstepping the role, and it was wrong. And as for the email from this White House, take a look at it. It's an extraordinary affront to our sovereignty, and it's a breach of the president's responsibility to faithfully execute the laws. All Americans should be outraged.
All right, we're going to move on to our lightning round, short answer round here. And so during that time, we're going to take your eyes off the clock. We're not going to run the clock. But the first few questions I'm going to ask will be yes, no. Well, okay, actually, I lied. I have one question before the yes, no. So first question I'd like to know, try and keep these answers under 15 seconds. We'll begin with you, Mr. Weiser. So we're talking about statewide issues here tonight, but we're also here in Colorado Springs, and Southern Colorado certainly faces its own set of unique issues. What is a unique problem to either Colorado Springs or Pueblo that you can solve in the first year?
I want to talk for a minute about the wildfires that I was in Pueblo for twice, seeing how harmful they were. We need to do much better as a state preparing for wildfires and to be ready to respond from them. I am going to raise our game, transform our leadership on wildfire response. So for Pueblo, Colorado, we're going to be better prepared, better avoid what we saw in the Aspen Acres fire.
And Mr. Lopez?
You know, two of the most important things that is facing Colorado Springs and Pueblo are homelessness and drugs. Fentanyl is running rampant in Pueblo. Homelessness, you drive up and down the streets here in Colorado Springs and you see it. We must pay attention to what is happening in our communities. And again, those are the two things that I'm going to be focusing on in working with the mayors and working with the county commissioners of both jurisdictions, because we do not want to see our brothers and sisters suffer because of the fact that government is not there to help them find a better path.
Okay, and these yes, no on ballot issues, you guys can just answer them at the same time. So there's two competing income tax initiatives. One's going through a signature review process, but first is Initiative 232, which is on the ballot that caps income tax at 4.4%. Yes or no, how will you vote?
Say that again.
Initiative 232, it is on the ballot. It caps income tax at 4.4%.
I would vote yes.
I'm not for doing that, and on your next one, I don't take positions until something is actually certified, so I'm not going to be able to offer an answer.
Okay, Mr. Lopez, would you like to answer on Initiative 195? That would ask voters to reduce the income tax on people earning less than $100,000 a year and then increase up to 8.4% on high earners and corporations?
I believe that one hasn't been certified yet.
Correct. So are you taking the same stance as Mr. Weiser then, and not? Okay. I guess I gave you a cop-out there. All right. Weak moderator. So 2 questions relating to transgender youth. The first is Initiative 110 would ban gender-affirming surgeries on minors. Yes or no?
Yes.
I want to say about both of these, my test for anything I do is to make sure that I really listen to people who it affects. And I've talked to families with transgender kids, transgender Coloradans. These measures are about stigmatizing them, and I don't believe in that. We in Colorado need to recognize that we don't prey on those who are vulnerable. These measures aren't about solving problems. They're about distracting people from our challenges. So I'm a no on both.
Well, let me add to that, because he said about listening to the people. That was a petition. Over 125 registered voters signed that petition to put it on the ballot. So I don't think we need to listen. We need to evaluate and wait to see what the people of Colorado decide.
And what about Initiative 109, requiring transgender youth to participate in sports based on their biological sex? Yes or no?
I would vote yes, because we should not allow children to harm their bodies until they're of age. And I think parents should have a say on that. And right now, again, because of the fact that government has failed us, the citizens have taken it upon themselves to bring this message forward. And this is democracy. This is what democracy is all about, is when the legislature and the government is not doing it right, the people have an opportunity to bring them forth and ask the question, truly ask the question of their peers, not of some elected official.
And we'll try to keep it, this is our short answer.
I've got a
segment.
question for you, Greg. Have you sat down with any families with transgender kids and listened to them?
I have.
And
I've also sat down with kids that have that had the transgender surgery that regret the fact that they did it.
And when you sat down with families with transgender kids, were they concerned that they were being bullied or more likely to die by suicide than other kids?
They had a concern that society was just not understanding their children. And that's because we, as adults, are not allowing people to understand we must live by the golden rule. Treat others as you would like to be treated. And this is something that we must echo. And as a governor, I will echo that across the state because we must respect each other. And we cannot attack or tell someone that it is wrong for their decision. However, we must protect the most vulnerable.
Can I just follow up on this? And that's why I hope you join me in saying removing transgender Americans from the military is wrong, and we need to reverse that action.
Well, first of all, I've been in the military. Have you been in the military?
I have not.
Okay, so being in the military, it's a brotherhood. And so when we are asked to go to war, we must understand that there are some that have the ability to go to war and some that do not have the ability because of their character. I'm not saying that we should just automatically say that you're not allowed. There's a proper place for everyone.
We do need to move on. Just one, and again, keep this to yes, no. I know I've not been very strict on that tonight. Initiative 177.
That's asking me questions.
Right to natural gas. Do not make me turn that clock back on. I will. Initiative 177, right to natural gas. How will you vote? Yes or no?
No, it's an invitation to mischief.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
the right to natural gas ballot initiative.
The right to what?
Right to natural gas.
Yes, we need to have the right to natural gas.
All right, this one's easy. What's your prediction, Greg, first? What's the Broncos' record this season?
The Broncos. Okay, so we know last year we should have won the Super Bowl if it wasn't for that last play where we broke our ankle. I think we're going to go to the Super Bowl again. I think we're going to get there with a record of 14-2.
Okay, Mr. Weiser.
I'm going to agree with Greg.
All right. You heard it here first, folks. Next, Mr. Weiser.
Glad you didn't ask about the Nuggets because that's a sore subject.
Yeah. Does Colorado need to rethink voter-approved wolf reintroduction, Mr. Weiser?
The voters have called for the introduction of wolves. I recognize that pretty much everybody around this topic is unhappy with how it's been implemented. So we got to do much better making sure that we're listening to those who are affected, we're implementing it. That's going to be my focus as governor, and I believe we can do much better.
Okay, Mr. Lopez.
I would tell you, look, I've heard the Attorney General say that he will protect people when they're being harmed. Well, the wolf is harming ranchers and farmers. He never filed a lawsuit against Governor Polis for violating the Endangered Species Act. I will tell you it is wrong for the urban corridor to tell the rural Colorado, the western slope, that they must have wolves in their backyard because if you look at the results, the only reason it passed was because Denver and Boulder passed it, with the caveat that the wolves must be released on the western slope. Think about that for a minute. So we must understand that the wolf is dying. This environment is not allowing them to survive. When 60% of them are survival and that's not meeting the requirement of the plan, it's time to make sure that we follow the plan. And I would say it's time for the wolf, the non-essential experimental population, to be given back to the federal government.
All right. This one's an easy yes/no question. Let's try that. Would you support ranked choice voting in non-municipal elections, Mr. Lopez? Yes or no?
The jury's still out on that one for me. I'm still doing research.
Mr. Lopez?
I am for experiments in ranked choice voting at lower levels so we can learn more.
Okay. Mr. Weiser, what 2 state agencies or departments would you move to eliminate? Pick 2.
I'm not ready to say that we would eliminate any department. I will be thinking hard about what's the best government structure. And if and when I am elected governor, I will look forward to that work. But at this point, I don't have a plan to share.
Okay. Mr. Lopez?
You know, I think it's premature to be asking candidates what department they would cut. Because first, you have to evaluate the budget. You have to evaluate, is that division actually fulfilling its mission and its goal? And so before anybody can make that type of decision, you must make a good informed decision. Now, there are some committees, there's some commissions that I question if they're actually fulfilling their mission.
Okay.
Perfect example, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the Commission of Ag, and also the Commission of the Public Utilities Commission. These are some that I'm looking to evaluate to make sure that they're actually doing the things that put people over politics,
Okay.
do no harm, and do what works.
All right. Mr. Weiser?
I just want to respond and say, Victor Marks, if you're watching, we're having a lot of fun here. We're learning from one another. This is what democracy looks like. This wasn't too long a commute. It's a little longer to come to Grand Junction to join us. Please, Victor, what are you afraid of?
All right, folks, let's keep it down. All right. A quick question here, and again, we are running a little short on time here. So, Mr. Lopez, running for office, what's something you've changed your mind about since you started this campaign?
You know, what I've changed my mind about as I was running this campaign is being a Republican. Because today, the two-party system is failing the people of Colorado. And that's why I've chosen to run as an unaffiliated candidate. Because what I recognize is the voice of the people is no longer being listened to. Both parties want to score political points. They are now putting loyalty to party instead of loyalty to people. And as I talk to people across the state and I gather signatures in Denver, in Colorado Springs, in Fort Collins, I saw the frustration and heard the fear and frustration of people here in Colorado saying, I don't know that I can stay here because of what the government is doing to us and to our children.
All right, Mr. Weiser.
I want to say something that has swayed my mind tonight is how much respect and fondness I've got for Greg Lopez. He's here, he's putting himself out there, he's engaging in the arena, and we're going to do this a few times, and I'm looking forward to it because I appreciate your spirit. The fact that you pulled out a Constitution tonight, you had me there. And
kind of like a Jerry Maguire scene.
Exactly. And what I just want to say is this is what democracy should be, real discourse. And I want to add one more related point. When I ran a primary campaign, I was outspent 2-1. And I viewed it as an experiment in democracy. Can authentic engagement at the grassroots make a difference? And I wouldn't say NSA changed my mind, but I reaffirmed my belief that that's what matters. Showing up, listening to people, working together to get things done. I know we'll be able to work together when I'm governor.
All right. Mr. Weiser, and this should be under a sentence. What's the, seriously, what's the first bill you'd like to sign?
It's really hard to choose. I will say it's really important we pass a law about data centers. There's a lot of concern out there. How do we get it right? It is one of the top priorities we're going to be working on.
Okay, Mr. Lopez, what's your first bill?
You know, before I talk about my first bill, I think it's important to understand that you need
10
to
seconds.
sit down with the leadership and have a conversation about what they're hearing from their constituents.
He's going to work with me in the data center.
One of the first things I'm going to do is encourage them to not have 5 bills in the session. That's 600 bills that they pass every single year. Most people out here in the audience have no clue that every 5 months, the state of Colorado passes 600 bills, and they have a fiscal note. I will tell you, they don't have time to read those bills. They should be only allowed 2 bills with perhaps some parameters on how they might introduce additional bills. That is the type of government that we need here in Colorado.
All right, thank you. Thank you both.
Okay, we're going to move on from our short answer segment now. So one of the things that we hear about from voters, people in the community, is the condition of the roads in Colorado. We hear especially from out-of-state drivers, well, I knew when I was in Colorado because the roads got a lot worse. Colorado has made investments in roads in the last decade, but there are still infrastructure needs. Mr. Lopez, you've proposed buying E470, the toll road that many people use to get to DIA to reduce congestion. Mr. Weiser, you've said it's time to prioritize getting a rail line from Denver up and running. My question for both of you, though, is does the state have enough flexibility and funding to meet its transportation needs? And if you're elected, how would you allocate money between highways, transit, and rail? Mr. Weiser, you have 1 minute.
We have to walk and chew gum at the same time. We need multi-modes of transportation. I really want to make sure people from Colorado Springs can take a train to the Broncos games to go to the new stadium and not have to be on I-25. I want to make sure that we widen Pena Boulevard so people aren't waiting in traffic when they go to the airport. Those are not either or, it's both and. I just worked on a measure with those who were pushing a ballot initiative to take something off the ballot, to get it solved through real collaboration and a commitment to the type of attention we need to invest in our roads to do better. I would say many roads in Colorado are in unacceptable shape. Think about Northeast Colorado, for example. We need to do better. I don't just have a plan to do better, I'm actually working now and worked with those pushing this measure to make progress. As governor, we will do both.
Mr. Lopez.
Well, let me remind everybody that government doesn't make money, it takes money. So anytime we talk about a new railroad system, basically what they're saying is we need to stick our hand in your pocket to make sure that we can pay for this. I will tell you, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. When CDOT is spending money on things that are not about pavement, it's not about getting you from point A to point B, it's about electric vehicle charging stations. It's about trails. It's about bicycle lanes. That is not what CDOT is supposed to be doing. Now, we need to understand that the freedom of mobility is what makes Colorado such a beautiful state, because we have the ability to go up to the mountains, to decide where we're going to go. And more importantly, we all know what time of day we should leave if we don't want to get caught in congestion. But we need to understand that it is wrong for moms to be sitting in traffic for 3 hours when all they're trying to do is get home to their kids and help them with their homework and cook dinner. We need to address this issue because it is a people issue.
All right, we'll move on. Next question, Mr. Weiser, you already broached an issue top of mind here in Colorado Springs is a proposed data center off of Garden of the Gods Road. Neighbors have raised concern about noise, environmental impacts, and soaring utility costs. Under your administration, what would your policy be on approving data centers, encouraging them or not, and what responsibility those companies will be required to take when it comes to being good neighbors? Mr. Weiser?
I have, as I mentioned, a commitment for us to create a state law with standards on data centers that first and foremost protect communities so that community members don't lose what in the law is known as quiet enjoyment. People in neighborhoods, say a nursing home or a healthcare facility, don't want a data center right next to them, and they shouldn't have it shoved down their throat. The communities should be able to say, no, it's not for us. Second, communities need to know their rates are not going to go up for their electricity. They deserve the safeguards so that those who bring the data center pay for the power. And the power should be consistent with our clean energy commitments. And there's lots of great promise. For example, geothermal power in northwest Colorado for data centers where we're closing coal plants can help create jobs for people losing jobs in coal plants. That's a great idea. For some other situations, not so much.
Okay, Mr. Lopez.
So when I was in Congress, I sat on two committees, the Budget Committee and the Space, Science, and Technology Committee. We talked a lot about AI, and we talked about how we let the genie out of the bottle, and we don't know what this genie is going to do. But we also never spoke about data centers. So why is it that all of a sudden these data centers are needed? Folks, for me, the jury's still out, but here's some of my major concerns. Why do they need to do them in the communities? And water is a big issue. Don't drink the Kool-Aid that this is recyclable water and that water is not going to be an issue. Our electric grid is so fragile, and you've read that the data centers sometimes are so big, they will take the entire need of energy from a small community. That is wrong. We need to make sure that these corporations pay their way, that they protect our community, not just when they're building, but for 20 to 30 years into the future. As governor, I will make sure that they do that.
This is a hot topic, so Mr. Weiser, 30 seconds, please.
As I said before, you can work with me on my first bill on data centers. I've got a lot of interest in what you just were talking about. I co-sign the concern about water. I want to note what Greg also just said, which is about how AI is changing the world. And I want to note my concern about our kids and AI chatbots and how I pushed for a law, and I'm going to have regulations to protect kids from the type of harms that I know are out there and have caused young people to die by suicide. I just settled a case with Meta, huge consequences, real restrictions, protecting kids on social media. I want to make sure we keep those protections for our kids in the AI world as well.
Mr. Lopez.
I will tell you, look, as an unaffiliated candidate, I don't have loyalty to party. So I'll be very happy to work with Attorney General Weiser. I look for good solutions. I look for people that fully understand what the future of Colorado needs to be. I don't care whether they're a Democrat or a Republican. It's about the people of Colorado. It is time for us to focus on how we're going to make Colorado a state that we can all be proud of. And like I said earlier, I compliment the Attorney General for his success with Meta. That is a huge deal. He deserves his props because it's important to protect our children from social media.
Thank you.
All right, I want to talk about gun laws now. Mr. Weiser, you've defended laws like the red flag law. Have there been any laws the legislature has passed that you disagree with, and does the state need to go further? And for Mr. Lopez, you have said you oppose unconstitutional restrictions. Which laws would you look to repeal if elected? You have 1 minute.
Well, look, I will tell you that any time someone doesn't understand the Constitution about the infringement of our rights, I will stand in the way. We all know that gun legislation is not stopping gun violence. We need to educate people about mental health. We need to understand why is it that there are people out there that don't treat life the way it should be treated. And so a lot of the restrictions that I will tell you we need to roll back is why in the world would we have to take a class to exercise our Second Amendment? And this is hurting poor Coloradans. This is hurting those individuals that are not making $60,000, $70,000. They can go to a class and pay hundreds of dollars when all they want to do is protect their family. All they want to do is feel safe at home. That is the issue that we should be talking about, is how do we make people feel safer? And so far, all this government control or gun control has done nothing to resolve the fears of gun violence.
But specifically, are there laws you would work to repeal if elected? 30 seconds.
The latest one where, again, CPW is supposed to do the training for people to be able to go and buy these firearms.
All right. And Mr. Weiser, you have 1 minute. Any laws the legislature has passed you disagree with, and does the state need to go further?
I've worked with the legislature on gun violence prevention with a public health mindset and with a commitment to ensuring that our laws comply with the Second Amendment. Let me tell you why I've done that. I've met with parents who've lost kids to gun violence. We had a roundtable discussion, and Jason was there and said kids that he works with say it's easier to get a gun or get access to fentanyl on social media than it is to get a job. That's a call to action for me. One of the ads I've put out there, hopefully you'll be seeing it here in Colorado Springs, is called Future, and it's about fighting for our kids' future and having the types of protections like our red flag law. I've met with students who have talked about how this red flag law can help promote school safety and how concerned they are about being safe in their schools. So to your question, I'm going to keep using a public health mindset and asking, what else do we need to do to keep our kids safe?
And I'll give you 30 seconds, but just real quickly, any laws on the books that you disagree with?
Because I've worked with the legislature as they've crafted laws, I've made sure they meet the basic standard Justice Scalia set out in the Heller decision that says reasonable restrictions on access to firearms are consistent with the Second Amendment. Something like a red flag law is a clear, reasonable restriction. If you're a danger to yourself or others, getting access to a firearm is playing with fire. We can avoid it, and we can save lives.
All right, we're at our closing statements. Mr. Weiser, you've got 1 minute, and then Mr. Lopez, you'll give yours.
First, I really want to thank both of you for moderating what has been an outstanding debate. Greg, I want to thank you for your spirit to be able to acknowledge, as I've done for you, that's what we need more of. And Coloradans, Colorado Springs, I want to acknowledge you, that I've heard you loud and clear about our challenges and that we must do better. We must make sure the starter homes we talk about get built, because teachers, nurses, firefighters should be able to live in communities where they work. We must do better on health care, enabling access to primary and preventative health care. We must do better for our kids to have an opportunity from early childhood education to career skills to get good jobs right now. And we must do better in building an economy that can work for everyone, helping people build businesses here and workers thrive. That commitment is from the bottom of my heart, believing in America, believing in Colorado.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lopez.
You know, I'm running as an unaffiliated candidate because the two-party system is broken. The Democrats want to reach deeper into your pocket, and the Republican candidate didn't even bother to show up tonight. You know, Phil Weiser wants you to fear what the Republicans will do. Victor Marx, if he was here, he would ask you to fear what the Democrats have done. I'm asking you to believe what Coloradans can do together. I'm not running to govern from the left or the right. I'm running to move Colorado forward, and that is why I am offering Colorado a different path. My governing principles are simple. People over politics, do no harm, and do what works. Ask yourself one question. Are you better off today than you were 8 years ago? Is housing more affordable? Is your insurance cheaper? Are your groceries cheaper? Do you feel safer? Do you have more confidence in government? If the answer is no, then why would you vote for more of the same? You know, tonight you saw two different choices. Party government or people government. Phil Weiser represents one political party. I represent a different way of governing. So I am asking for your vote, not for a party, but for you, for our future, and for Colorado.
All right. You may now applaud and cheer. Thank you, everyone here at the Pikes Peak Center who came out here tonight, and a big thank you to our candidates as well. Thank you to my co-moderator, Ernest Lunning. And again, thank you so much to our news partners across the state for streaming this debate.